Unit 8. Listening.
For my project on mountains, I decided to research Mount Vesuvius. Ever since I went there on holiday, I've been fascinated by this volcano. It's on the west coast of Italy, and it rises 1,281 meters above sea level. Vesuvius has a long history of deadly eruptions, which is when a volcano explodes and rocks, hot lava, and gas are thrown out. Vesuvius is most famous for the eruption in AD 79, which destroyed the neighboring cities of Pompeii and Herculaneum. In this presentation, I'm going to discuss how the volcano was formed, the history of the volcano, especially the eruption of AD 79, and what we can expect in the future. Vesuvius's story started millions of years ago, when it was formed from the Eurasian and African plates. These two huge areas of land crashed into each other, pushing magma, or hot rock, up to the surface, where it formed the volcano. Vesuvius's appearance has probably changed many times over the years, but nowadays it looks like a typical cone-shaped volcano with steep sides. An important fact to point out is that Vesuvius is the only active volcano on the European mainland. It's true that there are other volcanoes in Europe, like Mount Teide and Mount Etna, but they're on islands. People tend to think that the only eruption of Vesuvius was in AD 79. However, it has erupted many times, both before and after. For example, it erupted 3 times in the 20th century, and it may have erupted more than 10 times in the 18th century. That's once every 10 years. Despite that, people have lived in that region for thousands of years. You might wonder why people would choose to live in such a dangerous place. Well, it makes sense that people would end up living there because the land around the volcanoes is usually very good for farming. I'm of the opinion that the eruption of Vesuvius in AD 79 is one of the most fascinating events in history. Although it took place nearly 2,000 years ago, we have a good idea of what happened thanks to a Roman lawyer called Pliny the Younger. He was the most important Roman historian in my view because he's helped us understand the events of AD 79. He wrote detailed descriptions of the destruction of the towns around the mountain, as well as the effect on the people living there. In fact, his uncle, Pliny the Elder, was a famous Roman philosopher. He tried to rescue a number of inhabitants from the area during the eruption, and Pliny the Younger wrote in detail about this rescue attempt. Another reason it's so interesting is that to this day you can see how the people living in the nearby town of Pompeii were affected by the eruption. Pompeii was in the shadow of Vesuvius, and when it exploded into action in AD 79, the town was covered with volcanic ash and dust. It was terrible for the town's inhabitants, but the ash and dust helped to preserve the city. In fact, you can still see many of the buildings and even the people who were sheltering in them from the volcano. It's a huge tourist attraction with millions of visitors every year. So what can we expect of Vesuvius in the future? Nowadays, there are more than 3 million people living in the area surrounding the volcano, including the city of Naples. If the volcano erupts again, there could be a lot of damage and destruction. There hasn't been an eruption since 1944, and the last big one was in 1631. So, if you ask me, the next eruption will be a big one. The question is, when will it happen?